All right, Sean, can you hear us?
Yep.
George, can you hear us? Okay. And make sure everybody's.
I am good to go. Oh, and I don't know, I don't get to dictate this, but I saw you messing with the camera's frame or someone, and I think I kind of prefer that it be zoomed out so I can see the other people around the table.
Okay.
And then maybe in the future, George and my disembodied heads could be suspended above our empty chairs.
Okay.
Just a thought. Okay. Well, it is 8:33, so we're here for another regular meeting of the Clear Creek County Board of County Commissioners, and we're starting with an administrative approval of renewal for the MMJ store license, exit 243, DBA dispensary, exit 243. Nanette?
Good morning, everybody. Standard application. We have not received any indication that there's an issue with the renewal of this license.
So you're recommending approval?
Yes, we are. That's correct.
Okay. Peter, this is not one of the ones that we need to open up public comment for, correct?
That is correct. There's no hearing scheduled. Am I correct with that, Nanette?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm always confused about that one, 5 years in or whatever, but we'll consider that one approved and we'll move on to public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nanette. Has anyone come here today to make a public comment? If so, please, well, there's no one in the attendees list. So if any of the panelists are here to make a public comment, which we're all staff, so I will close public comment. Actually, is there anyone in the room who's come to make a public comment? All right, so we'll close public comment then. Commissioner updates. I'll give a very quick one. We had a CCI Mountain District meeting yesterday. The physical meeting was down in Fremont County. We talked about a lot of different issues, including things that were on the wish list for CCI regarding legislative initiatives for next session. George presented a couple of those, the two that we had presented in the past, and I'll let him talk about them if he wants to. Yeah, beyond that, we had a really productive meeting on Wednesday with the sheriff and the undersheriff, and we have some follow-up items about that. And I think that's probably about all I'm going to say.
Logo on there.
Looks nice.
How about George next? He's had his coffee.
Oh, you can tell. Yeah, so I'll start with talking about those CCI concepts. Both of them are efforts to get the legislature to let counties propose different types of taxes than we can right now. And this is a response to the well-known fact that Clear Creek County is struggling with revenues. The mine is closing, and we share a goal of trying to have better options to fund the programs that people want to see. These two options are sort of more fair ways to propose taxes in the community than we have available to us now. Right now, it's basically countywide sales tax and property tax. And the idea related, for example, in property tax that, somebody living over in your neighborhood, Sean, should be coming out of pocket to provide public safety on I-70 doesn't make a ton of sense. And so these ideas would just have a more fair approach. One of them is that we could propose sales taxes in the unincorporated areas only, where there's a very low effective sales tax rate. And a lot of that, the sales tax base in unincorporated Clear Creek is skiers and people buying coffees at that Starbucks in Dumont that at one point was the busiest Starbucks in the state. The other concept is related to directly collecting revenues from recreation folks. This would be permission to tax the recreation services such as lift tickets and raft trips. The reason I like that one is it's kind of a luxury service by definition. And these activities are driving our costs. And again, asking for, someone to come out of their pocket to pay for this, who isn't engaging in the service and experiencing the impacts, doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're just trying to get the legislature to give us some better options to show up for our community in better ways than we have, and just address our revenue shortfalls and continue to be able to show up as we have. So those are the CCI concepts. I am going to attend other district meetings to present our submittals as well, and hope to gain some momentum around these concepts. We've brought them 3 years in a row, and people are, I hope, starting to get curious. Next, the project support, the nonprofit dedicated to serving the seniors in our community, has formed a senior advisory council. They're very much an organization that's being reinvigorated after COVID imposed some pretty serious challenges on them. They have a new director, Tamara Orndorff, who's very energetic, doing a lot. They have created a senior advisory council. They just had the first meeting. They invited me to participate. I don't really understand what the county role is, and that's something I want to understand. Because I don't know that I don't know if I'm there representing the county or not. And if I am, am I the right person? Is someone on our staff the right person? Is another commissioner interested? Of course, I'm interested and happy to participate, and just want to make sure that others are well.
I would just say, in as much as that's headquartered in Idaho Springs and you're down the road, that to me kind of makes sense. And I appreciate your willingness.
Okay, thanks. The good thing about this group's existence is that it makes us eligible for funding that we just have not been eligible for because we haven't had this group. And so I'll be bringing back an update once I understand a little bit better the county role in this. The last thing is we know that we have 4 mobile home parks for sale, and there's a community meeting to discuss that tonight, not being led by the county, being led by a local community organizer named Autumn Brooks. First, I want to thank Autumn for helping out, doing what she can to organize the community. There's a meeting this morning with Rep. Basnicker. Rep. Basnicker is a House rep who's very interested in mobile home park justice. And he's brought together a number of advocacy organizations who can help these communities understand their rights and their options in state law. And so that meeting, our staff is going to attend that meeting with Rep. Basnicker, and some of our staff is going to be present, and I'll be present this evening. I think you are aware, and I don't think I'm the only one that'll be there. And then the last thing related to mobile home parks is House Bill 22-1287 passed this session. It expanded the rights of mobile home owners to have an option to purchase their parks, and a lot of other details. Now there's a rulemaking to implement that. I think it would be wise for us to be plugged into this. 12% of the housing stock in Western Clear Creek County is mobile homes. This is the vast majority of the affordable housing in Clear Creek County, and the only naturally occurring affordable housing, as in affordable housing that doesn't require public subsidy. So I would be happy to have a conversation, carry an official county position, and in the absence of that, I can show up and represent my own perspective. So that's my update.
Thanks, George. Randy?
Yeah, I'll be a little bit shorter. We have several times issued a letter in support of Good Samaritan legislation for mine cleanup. And Ty Churchwell, who's generally triggered us to do that, has asked if we can develop an official county position. I can't recall if we've done that in the past, but just at a future meeting, I think we need to have a work session just to discuss that and figure out what we want to do. If we want to do it and get it on as an agenda item or work session, or perhaps even an action item if we are able to. I think probably a quick work session in an upcoming meeting would be good, and then we can give staff direction to put something in verbiage if we wish. There are the meeting of the CE, the collaborative effort, combined meeting of their capacity and AGS subcommittee meetings is coming up, where we're going to be talking about some pretty lofty principles on I-70, and that may develop. I'm not saying that it will, but it may develop a need for the county commission to come together and probably not reconsider our county positions on transportation, but in general, but there may be some tweaks to it that could come down the road as a result of that. And the main idea is reconsidering capacity. Reconsidering capacity to be, again, as we've talked about in the past, payload versus just vehicles and lanes. We often saw an email this morning in which a person was asserting that is pretty expert in the field that the only way to increase capacity on a highway is by adding vehicles and lanes. But they did add the caveat, unless, of course, you can increase the capacity of the occupancy of the vehicles, which is exactly what we're trying to do with a lot of the transit projects that are going on here. Also, we know that a lot of the data, the predictions that were done, the modeling that projected demand and volume for this at this period of time have not been met in Eagle and Summit counties and on I-70. And so that tells us that it may be time to reevaluate capacity need also. And what that could do is lead to changes in what kinds of AGS fixed guideway, if there is ever to be a fixed guideway, what sizes and scales of systems could be considered, because many have been eliminated because they don't meet the thresholds that are mandated in the record of decision. So again, that's why it turns into a bunch of technical, lofty discussions that could end up in, for example, a change in our a tweak to our position on our currently stated positions with regard to I-70. And that might pop up again today in our meeting with Summit County even for a little bit. And also at yesterday's Mountain District meeting, there was, I spoke about an OHV law that had been proposed from Montrose County to legalize OHVs on small state highways, stuff other than interstates and high volume highways. And ostensibly, it would only legalize them on those highways and potentially not on county roads, or could be worded that way. But we know from in the past that even the legalization of the states has muddied the courts up enough, court outcomes, that law enforcement and DAs become very reluctant to prosecute those, and they become almost impossible to prosecute because of the challenges that are successful. Because county roads are a subset of the state highway system and are actually even referred to technically in law as highways. And so I got with Peter on that, and he confirmed all that and said, yeah, it would throw us right back in the same lurch that we were in before, where law enforcement and the judiciary are unable to even, they're unwilling or reluctant to issue tickets they can't make stand up in court because there's conflicts in the law. My understanding is that both CDOT and the State Patrol are pretty strenuously lobbying against this, or will lobby against it if it continues forward. And so it's unlikely to go anywhere, I think, at this point in time. But I just spoke to that at CCI yesterday to make sure that those legal facts were understood once I talked to Peter. So, and
Anything else, Randy or George?
I presume, Randy, you said, and that's it. Somehow you got muted when you were saying and.
You all three of them?
You left us hanging here in the virtual meeting.
That was my
Yes.
fault.
Okay, so look at that. We're almost here at 8:50.
Funny.
Brian, what's your county manager update, please?
Quick question for the three of you. Did Fremont County mention their cyber attack?
They did. The meeting started in a very clunky manner because because they had no services.
They're shut, it sounds like they're shut down for the rest of the week and maybe all of next week as well. So it's a major
First part you said again, Fremont County is,
cyber attack.
oh,
Shut them down.
It shut them down. They're closed all next week.
Yeah,
So-
we heard that right when we logged in. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I work in a very sensitive business when I'm not doing public work, and it's something that I always think a lot about. I wonder how we feel about our readiness and if we've done anything like a security audit or something along the lines of a preventative measure to see if there are vulnerabilities that we might want to address.
Take that.
Yeah, we've done a lot this year. I probably can't speak as eloquently as our IT people, but I can tell you our switch to Office 365 put a lot of the security requirements and responsibilities in the hands of Microsoft versus us doing repetitive patches to keep out hackers. We still have to do patches on the network, but not as many as we were when we had email on the Exchange server. So we made that jump. We also made a jump on antivirus software called Sophos. You've probably seen the requirements on your laptops to reboot and update. And then we also have a program called Synchro, which adds a little bit of security to where our guys can remote into your computers and make sure everything's okay and that everybody's following security protocols. And what else? We have a program called Arctic Wolf that is basically an outside firm of ex-military that they test your system constantly all day long and see if anybody's trying to hack in. And so we've got those people watching our entire network all the time. They will ping us right away if they see a problem, or they will shut it down so that the hackers can't get in. And then we have kind of doubled our redundancy backup. So we have more than one backup of our entire network at any given minute, any day of the week. And so, you know, if your computer crashes and you're like, oh crap, I lost everything, we can get it back for you. It might take a little bit, but we can get it back for you pretty quick. So, yep, we're getting there.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'm thinking about too is not long ago, we found out about an enterprising branch of our county government that had created some of their infrastructure outside of our security policies. And the other thing I wonder about too is things like zip drives and the ability for somebody to get something planted inside our firewall with a handheld device. So I don't know that we need to figure that out now, but it always makes, when somebody else makes a big mistake, and it makes me think about making sure that we're not going to follow them.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. What was the question that I asked on the first item you mentioned is how does this happen and how do we ensure it can't happen again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've had and are having those kinds of conversations. So I don't know if you had a chance to see the email from Beth with the agenda, but we do have the joint meeting with Summit County today at noon. And Beth did send out an agenda to all of you, and it's got 5 items on it. All items on our list as well is housing, short-term rentals, lodging tax, wildfire, and I-70. So those are the 5 topics that Summit County is wanting to speak with us today about. So that agenda is probably sitting in your inboxes right now. So just a heads up there.
I have a question about that, Brian. I mean, I'm looking at the
Sure.
list, and these are all things that pretty much all of our neighbors are struggling with or trying to address right now. The 2 that we really have shared interests because they have the potential to cross our borders or do cross our borders are wildfire and I-70. I guess I'm a little bit confused on what is the intended outcome of this conversation.
That's a great question. Fair question. They reached out to us saying we're just reaching out to all of our partners in the region, wanting to have some discussions about common areas of interest. Is pretty much all they shared with us in the email when they requested the joint meeting. So I think maybe that's a great opening question when we open up the joint meeting is what do we, if we walk out of this a successful meeting, what does success look like, right? So maybe to ask them some question in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. So that's a great question.
Okay, perfect. And I see George unmuted, so he might know more about this than we do.
Yeah, I was curious as well. So I called Tamara Pogue yesterday just to see what was on her mind. And they like housing, for example, is something they want to bring up because of course the workforce doesn't always stay inside their county, right? 75% of our folks that work here come mostly from Jeffco. So they're talking about how can we help you all invest in your housing stock to help our labor force. An outcome of the meeting in Park County was that there's a project they want to try to get done. They have a housing program, right? They know how to put together projects. And so I think what they're looking for is what are the opportunities we have to do better by working together. And the wildfire thing is on there because I think it would be good for us to hear what Summit County's done. They've taken some really innovative approaches.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a great position of having very large and reliable streams of second and third homes that doesn't vote. So that's an enviable position to be in. But I really do appreciate what they're doing for their neighboring counties. It'd be great if we could benefit from that. Anything else, Brian?
Oh, yeah, two quick things. The mobile home park issue was mentioned, that recent legislation was mentioned. I just want to let you know, I think I've told a couple of you this, but we haven't all met in our one-on-ones, but we did bring back Willa, the consultant that did our last housing work for us. We brought them back on a very short contract and a small amount to help us kind of wade through that legislation and wade through what kind of opportunities are out there with respect to funding as it relates to mobile home parks. So Willa will be there in addition to staff at both meetings that are happening today. So, and then finally, I just wanted to let you know we are heavy in the middle of budget development right now for FY23. I have a sneaky suspicion some of our departments and divisions are getting a little frustrated with myself and Maria as we continue to look for ways to cut our general fund. And with that in mind, our transit team is looking at applying for a grant. So this is just a little bit of a heads up at this point, but we're looking at applying to a grant through CDOT that is federal dollars. The requirements of the grant are to expand service, and by that I mean an hour or two, right? So we're maybe looking at some of our routes that might benefit from expansion. But if we do get that grant, it would cover all of that expense in addition to some of our existing expense as it relates to transit. So that's just again another attempt to look and seek out ways to find relief for our general fund. So that would be a way to help with the subsidy that's required right now with respect to our cost for transit. So just a heads up. I think that's it.
Okay.
I see, and one thing I see is I just saw your email. It came while I was pulling my socks on today, this morning, and about going back to the Good Samaritan thing, and you may be seeking direction to write a letter. I think Ty Churchwell was writing about two things, potentially another letter, but also creating a public policy. So I think looking into, we could probably create a county policy that could be centered around what that letter is. So I think if we had staff direction to update the letter for 2022, if the other commissioners agree, and then to look at a way to also take that same verbiage and turn it into a brief, simple policy regarding Good Sam legislation and our support thereof on a continuing basis, because it's a big deal in our county. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking to the EPA about the whole Superfund, study right now. So if the other commissioners are okay with that, if we can have a staff direction that comes out to both craft a letter for our final approval as well as a policy that mimics that letter, that might be good.
So maybe we bring you an actual action item with that letter, and then we can talk about what the letter looks like, what the topic looks like, and then come back with a policy or something.
Circulate it back to us so that we can, one-stop shopping, get it done in one day, in a short session in one of our upcoming meetings here pretty quickly. So
It works.
if you guys are okay. George, Sean?
I'm all for it. A quick question for Peter. Does that look like passing a resolution so that we have something that's a little bit more durable than a letter that has kind of a timestamp on it?
So it's up to the board as to whether or not they want to pass a resolution. It won't be needed, but it certainly doesn't hurt to pass a resolution. It always gives an additional imprimatur, if you would say, when you do that. So if it's that important to the board, we can do a resolution that accompanies a letter.
And I'm not suggesting pro or con. I'm only bringing it up at Mr. Churchwell's suggestion that if we had a county policy, that could be helpful. And if we believe it's something that we should have a particular county position on, as we have in the past, for example, endorsing the ROD on I-70, that kind of a thing, then it's just a question. Should we do that?
Would the board like that? Would you prefer a resolution? Do you want us to just work with the letter initially and then see when we have the action item come before the board if they'd actually like to have a resolution ready?
I think if they ask for a letter, we should give them the letter, but I'm open to further steps as well if we think it's wise.
Yeah, it might be good to hear. And I haven't, thank you, Randy, for picking up that email because I haven't had a chance to read it thoroughly yet. Might be good to hear from them, what it is that they have in mind when they say that we should adopt a policy.
Yeah, I think I was agreeing as I was saying that. I was thinking it would probably require a little communication between Brian or Peter and Mr. Churchwell.
Anything else, George, Randy, Brian?
Nope.
All right, well, we're right here at 9 o'clock. Our next item is an action session. Consideration of approval of core services plan for Department of Human Services. Sarah?
Is it here okay?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to make this is good right here.
Yeah, you're good.
Kind of quick, so you guys have time to ask questions if you want, but I'm not sure if you guys remember signing the last plan in 2019, but I thought I would just start with a quick kind of overview of CORE and what it is and when it was established and some of the goals of CORE, and then the services that we offer through CORE and things that we have to consider when we're contracting with different providers using our CORE allocation. So CORE was first established in like the mid 90s, just as a way to provide services to families to prevent things like out-of-home placement, to help return kids home when there's been a removal and kids have been placed in out-of-home placement, but then also to prevent changes in out-of-home placement. So some of the goals for it seems to be strengths-based. Again, preventing out-of-home placement and returning kids home placement. We can use CORE as paid for aftercare services, our county designed services, which I'm sure you guys saw in the plan, home-based intervention, intensive family therapy, life skills, mental health services, sexual abuse treatment, and substance abuse treatment. We also have a small portion of our CORE funding that we can use towards special economic assistance. So for families to be eligible for CORE, we have some program areas that they have to fall into. So they have to be at risk for involvement with human services or youth in conflict. So kids who maybe are having difficulties with their parents or other family members. Children need to be.
Sorry, how do you quantify that or like qualify them as, meeting those criteria? Because those sound a little bit general.
They are a little bit general, which I kind of like because then it allows us to provide more services to families. But so for the first program area, prevention for families that are at risk for involvement with human services can really just be as simple as the department's received a referral on a family alleging child abuse or neglect, and then we can offer services. It doesn't mean the family has to participate in those services. It just opens it up to allow us to provide services using our CORE funding.
Okay, so it's not difficult for you to justify making someone eligible, which is good.
Yeah, yep. The next program area was just the youth in conflict. Then program area 5 for us is children in need of protection. So that's similar to prevention. So kids who may be experiencing abuse or neglect in the home or even in placement. And then the last program area for us is just, we have an open guardianship case or an adoption case. with a family, then we can provide services to prevent a disruption in the adoption or the guardianship case. So just quickly, because I think this part gets a little bit confusing even for me, is how the allocation is determined. There is a child welfare allocation committee. We call it the BOCC. They get together and kind of look at a bunch of different areas to decide how much money each county gets. So the voting members of CWAC there's 8 county commissioners that participate in that, and then 3 employees from the Department of Human Services, from the Colorado Department of Human Services. And they, this past fiscal year, have decided to look at families in the community who fall below the 200% poverty rate, number of referrals that the county has received, number of assessments the county has opened, children involved in cases in that county, and out-of-home placement for that county. So they look at all those things and then determine how much each county will get in core. So for us in our county design system, there's 2 positions that we partially pay for through core. One is our in-home treatment provider, and one is our prevention social worker.
The question, Sarah, is that new formula, is that designed to, what am I trying to say here? Is that designed to get more money to folks that show more involvement and more out-of-home placements, or is it designed to sort of punish counties who have a higher out-of-home placement rate?
I think it's more just to try to figure out a fair way to distribute the funding. So counties feel like it's not just based on the size of their county, but how difficult situations can be in different counties. So we know if there's an out-of-home placement, that requires more work maybe, and more services to hopefully get those kids home. So giving those counties maybe more funding, or at least that being part of the decision-making on how much funding those counties get, then help provide those services to families. But I don't feel like it's a punishment looking at those things. I think it's just taking a broad, fair kind of approach to determining funding. Does that feel like I answered your question?
Yeah, and just to clarify what was on my mind is some approaches focus on accountability, and if you have more out-of-home placement, then you're not doing well, and you shouldn't, we should reward those who are doing well. Others have a different perspective where they say that's an indication of need for support, and so we're going to provide more funding based on this evidence. Sounds like it's the latter.
It is, and just I think to clarify, it's not that we get more money because there's maybe more kids in out-of-home placement. It's part of, I think, the picture that's looked at to support families to get those kids home. So that's really what the funding has to be used for, right? Is to provide those necessary services so we can return kids home.
Which is why it would need to go to the places where there's greater out-of-home placement in order to accomplish that goal. Is that correct? That's the intent?
Part of it. Yeah, part of it. I think that would be fair to say. George, does that feel like I answered that question? Okay. So this plan is a little bit different from the 2019 plan, if you all noticed, in that we pulled one of our county design employees out of the school system. The position I think was labeled in-school social worker or school-based social worker, but really we changed it to a prevention social worker. During the pandemic, she obviously wasn't working in the school. That wasn't where she was based out of. So during that time, we really switched her focus to doing more outreach to families beyond just that elementary school that she was based out of. And we really liked that approach, and having her kind of based in our office more and then working with a wider range of families. And so we've kept that in place, even as the kids have returned to school. And the services that we purchased, I'm sure you guys noticed that I just put in here like various treatment providers, because it then allows us to really contract with providers based on what a family needs. So we can take a unique approach with each family and meet with them and talk with them about what's worked for them in the past, what hasn't worked for them in the past, put in our kind of clinical expertise in there and on what we think might work, and and then contract with providers. First have to look at Medicaid providers. And then if the family has private insurance, we have to explore private insurance paying for those services before we use our core funding. And that is like a quick overview of this plan. You guys have any questions?
Yeah, I have some just kind of general questions to help me understand kind of what options we have. And so, I mean, that's kind of the question is, what other alternatives do we have? What are we seeing other counties do with this plan? And why did we select the stuff that we selected?
So with the services that we purchase, those are very similar to what other counties purchase because we all have to follow those same kind of guidelines. So the services that we're allowed to provide through CORE are those aftercare services, the county design services, which are the home-based clinician and the prevention social worker, home-based intervention, the intensive family therapy, life skills, mental health services, sexual abuse treatment, and substance abuse. So when we're looking at contracting with those providers, if it's a clinical provider, so like a therapist or a psychologist, they have to be licensed through DORA. And that's the same for every county. I think we're lucky in Clear Creek that if we can't find a provider in the county, then we will use a provider in the metro area, which then just opens us up to having so many more options. And can get really creative. So I think just maybe to be specific with one provider that I really like working with is we found that adolescents have a really difficult time maybe with cognitive behavioral therapy or just like traditional talk therapy. So there's a yoga-based social worker, a licensed social worker that provides yoga social work to youth. And it's been a really good fit for so many of our kids to learn how to, I'm going to try to use words that aren't just social work words. I've been told that that's not always very helpful, but maybe have a difficult time regulating, like managing their emotions when their trauma has been triggered, but to use this yoga practice to learn how to manage some of those difficult feelings. And then they can take that practice into the real world. So we can get creative like that and contract then through CORE with this yoga social worker that's licensed through DORA to provide that service that's pretty unique, but to provide it to adolescents or even families and parents when it seems like it would be a good fit and when they want to do it, when they also agree that would be a good fit. The substance abuse treatment providers that we work with also tend to be when we can't use JCMH, tend to be out of the Denver area. George, do you want some of the specific providers that we use? Would that help?
Yeah, or just types of services, and I don't understand the landscape well, but I'm not necessarily asking for a comprehensive list of everything we could do, but just kind of what's, I guess, more specifically, anything out there that we see other counties doing a lot that we've chosen to take a different approach.
A lot of what we do is very similar to the other counties in terms of the substance abuse treatment. That's a pretty standard practice, and that our clients will first complete a substance abuse evaluation, and then whatever is recommended from that evaluation is what we encourage families to participate in. And most of these services are then like research-based services. So the multi-systemic therapy, I think you'll see used a lot in the Denver area, and then we've been lucky enough to have an agreement through an agency that will come up to Clear Creek and provide that in Clear Creek. But I think that that's unique to our county in terms of rural counties and having that option available in our county. And when a family doesn't have Medicaid or there's a delay in getting Medicaid in place, then we can pay for that service through CORE. So I'd like that we can be pretty flexible with the program and And when there's a delay in getting Medicaid in place, we can use core because we know when families need services, they need it right away. And they don't have the luxury of time when they're in crisis to wait for things like Medicaid or their private insurance to figure out who's going to pay and get it in place. With our county designed programs, I think those are really unique to our county. There are at least 6 others that have a treatment like team, like a group of therapists that can work with families that are involved in child welfare. Our clinician right now is also a psychologist, so she can provide psychological evaluations for our clients and trauma evaluations for our clients, but then also provide therapy, some pretty specific modalities, if you guys wanted to talk about those at all. And then our prevention social worker can do a lot of the outreach to families, but then provide some pretty specific life skills interventions with families, which is unique to our county. You'll see the life skills work done in a lot of different counties, but a lot of counties have to contract out for treatment providers. And we don't have anyone other than Savio who can just provide this very specific treatment model. We don't have anyone else that can do provide in-home therapy.
I'm really curious about what that looks like. I mean, life skills is an extremely broad area to provide assistance. And I know there are other nonprofits, Rock House is one who does tutoring for kids, and other, stakeholders in the community who are focusing on different parts of that. And I mean, personally, I think one of the ones that triggers other problems is financial literacy. And I don't know I'd be curious, Sarah, to hear a little bit more about how you guys diagnose the gaps and address them.
I mean, really, I think the first step is our prevention worker meeting with the family and learning from them what they feel like their gaps are. So we come in with this very limited kind of view based on whatever the referral was. So then meeting with the families and talking about, like, so here's the concerns that somebody in the community has. Do you agree with those concerns? Like, how are things going? What are the barriers to getting into treatment or getting the services that your family might need? And how can we get you connected? And sometimes it really is just talking with families about what's available in the community. So sometimes the social worker just might go into the home and talk about the Rock House and what a great service that might be for the youth in their home, in the family's home, and then helping them get connected with the Rock House or GCMH or the other services in the community, and then quickly kind of backing out of the home if they're ready then to be on their own and get those services without her helping them do that. So it really, when I agree that life skills is a broad kind of term, and so it depends on what that family might need support with, and then she can provide that or get them connected with somebody who can provide it if she can't.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And then the other thing I was kind of wondering about, I happened to be in the clinic a couple weeks ago when my friend was serving tacos with his nonprofit in the parking lot, and I met a relatively new person at JCMH, and her focus was on younger people. I think it was children to age 12, maybe. It was kind of interesting because it was sort of very complementary to what Resilience 1221 is doing. I'm just sort of curious in general, like, how do we keep people from falling through the cracks? Because there's all these different pieces and all these different kind of disconnected providers who are solving pieces of the puzzle that are all sometimes related to each other.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And so for now, the thing that our department's trying to do is meet monthly with GCMH, just so we can stay on top of what services they offer and who's available in the community to provide those services, but then also just to connect our supervisors with their supervisors. So if we're hearing from our clients that they're not hearing back from GCMH, or that they're being told that there's a really long wait list, or that their only option is virtual, then we can address that directly with GCMH and make sure that those people, at least that we know about, are being served in the best way that we can serve them. But I think it's it's difficult because there's always going to be those people that aren't on our radar. And I don't know how we make sure that they don't fall through the cracks, but I think that's a good goal for the community.
Yeah, and one lens that I look through it at, I mean, I know probably more than most about what happens at JCMH, and I'm sure people have read some of the not editorials, but news stories that have happened regarding people who fell through the cracks at JCMH and had very bad outcomes. And it's a very challenging situation because one of the very common symptoms of mental health is treatment resistance and not wanting to seek help or even receive help. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think it's a challenge, and I think there's a really difficult balance between respecting privacy and being proactive and following up and making sure that people who come in and ask for help or have been referred for help end up getting what they need, and don't just, like I said, kind of fall off the radar.
I think that it's really important that there is, in as timely a fashion as possible, support available when someone asks. That's really, really important because of the resistance that you talk about. And I guess towards that end, that availability is contingent upon the ability of a place like JCMH, who may be overwhelmed with the load they have in Jeffco at that moment and only have so much time for the number of cases they have. Another piece of it is the availability of, so our availability to be able to have a plan in place to at least address those that we can identify and do know about is important. Obviously, you can't know about what you don't know about. We need to seek ways to find out about the things we don't know, and who we don't know about. But again, still, we can't do it until we do know. Another piece is, how robust, and this is a question that leads to a question that I have, how robust is our access to providers that are supported by Medicaid, that are Medicaid eligible, that are serving the Medicaid population at this time? I know we've had challenges in the past having enough people sometimes, or being able to find the right person to do that if a person has Medicaid. So, and my recollection is that the law, the way it was being administrated, was that if you had Medicaid, then you had to see a Medicaid provider. And if there was no Medicaid provider available, you weren't even allowed to see somebody else until a Medicaid provider became available. Is that a problem that you face? And how robust today is that, we'll call it that Medicaid stable of providers?
I feel like there's a lot of questions in there.
Well, there's two basic ones. So, does that present a challenge for you still, that dynamic of not being able to treat them via another method if there's not a Medicaid provider available? Number two, how robust is our access to Medicaid providers at this time? How successful are we in getting people to them in a timely fashion?
Yeah, it's difficult sometimes to work with Medicaid because there can be long wait lists, and there's a required intake. And then so you have to schedule for your intake, and then you have to wait until you get assigned a treatment provider. So sometimes when our families are in crisis, we don't feel like we can wait for that period of time. So even right now, we're agreeing to use some of our core services with a family who is on a wait list through Medicaid, and they can't wait. We know if we wait, then we're going to end up with some kids in out-of-home placement. And so it's better just to put the money in up front, pay for core, get services in place, and then hope that things work out later with Medicaid. And that's not necessarily a function of JCMH. I think that's just
right.
Medicaid.
That's what I'm saying. It's an additional problem to the JCMH availability. Yeah.
We have found that the providers that we like to work with in the metro area don't want to contract with Medicaid because sounds like it's difficult to bill Medicaid. It's difficult to work with Medicaid. Medicaid doesn't pay very much for the service. And so our providers have just said, we're not doing it. We're not interested. So I don't always feel like we have a good variety of Medicaid providers. That being said, I love that Savio, who's providing the multi-systemic therapy in Cooper County, has taken that on, and they are now a Medicaid provider. So we can use, if the family has Medicaid, then that can be the funding source for that treatment in the home. There's another agency that hopefully by January 1st will start providing, it's called Child First, and they'll start providing that in Cooper County in the home, which is great to have two different, other than just JCMH, two different Medicaid providers in the county providing in-home services. So hopefully by January, we'll have both of those.
Yeah, and my question was really whether my understanding was there was a prohibition against those with Medicaid from going to a non-Medicaid provider, non-Medicaid source, unless it was, judicially funded because a case was open at the time or something like that. Is that true? Is that still true? Was it true? That was my understanding a few years ago.
So not totally in my area of expertise.
Okay.
What I've heard is that clients, it's not that the client can't go, it's that providers aren't supposed to take private pay from a client if they have Medicaid. So that is unethical.
And if the provider doesn't accept Medicaid, and if there's not a Medicaid provider available in the area and you're on a long wait list, then you're unable to even get your own wallet out, pay another person who doesn't take Medicaid to provide that service in the interim to really address a crisis, to be able to provide triage.
And I think an important piece of that is oftentimes maybe it's a parent that says, yeah, you're in crisis, I'm ready to help you out. And that parent's money can't show up to help you either, kind of thing, right? Like it renders you unable to receive the kind of support that we typically do through our family and friends, etc.
I feel like there's a workaround in that if clients work through CCHA, the agency that oversees Medicaid essentially in the county. But I think that's difficult to navigate that system. Medicaid is not always very friendly to work with.
Well, I think isn't JCMH's flavor of Medicaid a little more friendly? And I might be stepping beyond what I think I really know, but I thought that they received like a subcapitation payment based on our population and our demographics. So like Medicaid gave them X per quarter or per month, which made everybody in the entire county who was Medicaid qualified the ability to access the service without going through any billing or any other hassle like that. But I might have that slightly or totally wrong.
I think the issue sometimes with JCMH is just they don't always have providers, and there can be a long wait list, and there's not always somebody available. So the last time we met with JCMH would have been a couple of weeks ago, and I think they still have 4. I'm just going off the top of my head, so some of these numbers might be totally accurate. I think they still have 4 positions open for the mountain region, which is us and Gilpin.
Yeah.
And so I think they really encourage clients to participate in services virtually, which doesn't always work.
Yep.
For so many people in our community.
I think they have 100 recs open total across their entire organization, but I also think that doesn't mean we shouldn't ask for the help that we need.
Absolutely. Yep.
Good. I know we're coming up on 9:30. George, Randy, or other staff, any other comments or questions?
One that's kind of in the weeds. We have a psychologist on staff. Is that correct?
Correct.
Not a psychiatrist. Someone asked me that extension the other day, and I said, no, I did not believe we had a psychiatrist, but we have a psychologist on staff.
Right.
Correct.
So she can't prescribe medication.
Right.
Right.
The only other thing that I think is important to bring up related to this is I know that we applied for the collaborative management program, which is a state program that comes with funding to help us do it. And I think it's designed to accomplish what you were discussing you're doing already with monthly meetings with all of the providers to try to sort of figure out how to how to provide services to families with complex needs, et cetera. And so I have a lot of optimism that things are on their way towards getting better in that arena in Clear Creek County. And I wanted to just ask you if you kind of see the same potential there.
I'm hopeful. We won't receive funding for the collaborative management program until next year. It's incentive based. So this is our first year officially being a CMP county. And I think as we get going and people know more about it, then we'll get more referrals. And then those agencies ideally come together to figure out who can provide what service and prevent overlap. And obviously families come to those meetings too. It's not just the professionals coming. So the family obviously is there and talking through what might be the best service and then who at the table is best equipped to provide that service to the family.
Thank you. That's my only question. Other than that, I'm in support of this application or this contract.
Yeah, me too. And I think being an action, I think we need to close out this conversation with a motion.
Move we approve the core services plan for Department of Human Services.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Sarah and your team. Appreciate the update and thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you. I will send this to you all through DocuSign. The state won't accept it in any other format.
Nice. That's very good.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is the consent agenda. Is there any items on the consent agenda, Beth or Brian or Pete, that are not ready for us to vote on? Or are there any items that people wish to discuss individually?
Good from our perspective.
None for me.
Me neither.
I'm a little curious about the open space trail partnership. Not that we need to discuss it at length. I'm just, is Martha around? Is there anybody to speak to a little bit more about what this is?
Amy's here. I'm here.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. That's hopefully hang on. Hopefully my phone won't cut out. This is for the Floyd Hill. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is for the Floyd Hill trail improvements that we got money from GOCO for. And when we actually have gone through design, it's been 2 years because I think we got the grant in late 2021. It's going to cost more than we thought. And so we approached Jeffco as their co-owners of the 109 acres and said, can you guys pony up some money? And what they suggested to us was to apply for, this is a trails grant program that they run with their open space funds. And they told us to apply as a regional grant. And so we're hoping that meant that it's just a vehicle and that's great. And they'll give it to us, but it's not 100%, but it certainly is a way for us to get money from them. So if that's what they told us to do, that's what we're doing, is applying through that program. I think it makes it easier for them in terms of their budget.
Is this a grant? You know, sometimes you can get money from one source that then allows you to be used as leverage and match for money from another source. Is there any way to leverage that grant into additional funds through another source, or is there?
Well, we already have. We have 200. We have 200 and something. We have money from GOCO for our side. So
Right.
This is from their side. And yes, if we ended up needing more money and wanted to go somewhere else, I am sure that we can either use the GOCO or the Jeffco money to leverage more money. We're hoping that we don't need to do that.
And the question was just more of a question, just informational for me, not like, hey, here's something you should be doing with your time. It was just, I didn't know if you'd already identified if there were any opportunities, like, for example, when you work with Jeffco and then you are able to work and realizing there's GOCO money there already. work with the state and work to feds and be able to match up to other available grants that I know you work on. Was my only question.
Yeah, I don't think there's any problems with using it to leverage. We're hoping we don't need to do that.
Okay, thank you. I had one other quick question, Amy and Martha, since you're right here. Do you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Somebody pointed me toward this a few days ago, and it's a enterprising young man who's doing his Eagle Scout project, and he wants to raise money and install a little maintenance stand. And I've seen one of these at Mayhem Gulch and Centennial Cone. And
We're just seeing.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
There we go.
I'm wondering if
I don't
he's
know.
reached out to anybody
He's
on our
talking, but
side.
I can't hear him.
He's going to install, he's already met with us. He's planning to install this at Floyd Hill.
Not
And-
it reset
so-
itself.
He is doing part of what they do as an Eagle Scout or as their project is they have to raise funds. He's Gary put it on, I think probably where you saw it, and he's now got I think 2,000 something out of he needs 3,000 something. So we're well aware of it and watching him, and he has not asked Open Space for money yet, but I would guess that we will contribute something when he gets near the end. But that's part of their effort is to do fundraising, and he's doing a valiant job in making progress.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I was just hoping that that was the case and that that he had made those connections. So thanks for that. And I think it'll be a really cool improvement. Not probably only a few trailheads I've seen, like the one at Mayhem Gulch, actually have something like that, and they're very useful. Okay, thanks, Martha. Thanks, Amy. I don't have anything else.
He was approaches.
Yeah. Okay. So let me read the consent agenda. Item number 1, consideration approval of the warrant register. Number 2, consideration approval of resolution 2251, resolution supporting application to Jefferson County Open Space Trails Partnership Program for the improvement of the Floyd Hill Open Space Trail Park Trailhead Project. Number 3, consideration approval of resolution 22-52, resolution ratifying the rescission of the Clifford County fire ban declared on June 15th, 2022. That's it for today. Motion, please.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved. So I think we are, no, we're not done. We're done until 11. I'm sorry, until 10:30. And we have a executive session scheduled. So we move into executive session to discuss the following matters.
Pursuant to CRS 26402-4E for the county attorney to meet with the Board of County Commissioners for the purposes of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with regard to the possible construction of a new joint facility to house the Clear Creek County Fire Authority and the Clear Creek County EMS at the location of Station 2A. That is the only one we're going to probably be able to do at this time in that brief period of time, but I do want to read one other one in just in case, and that's pursuant to CRS 2464024B and E for the county attorney to meet with the Board of County Commissioners for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions pertaining to the intergovernmental agreement for the operation, administration, financial support of the Clear Creek County Communications Center, and for determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with regard to payment of annual operation charges for services at the Communication Center by IGA participating members.
Second.
That's it. That's it.
That's it.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Did you say anything, George?
Yes, I said I
Okay.
voted aye.
So the motion passes. The board will now move into executive session. No written minutes will be kept. No decisions will be made. We will return in time for the 10:30 interview for the Open Space Commission vacancy. See you guys. And Peter, I'm assuming you sent out a link to the three of us.
I did send out my own Zoom link, but I don't know if that's how we're doing it.
Yeah, I can't turn this one off.
So
So I can,
I'll mute these and I'll just leave.
We're gonna
and
do it
then-
here.
okay.
in here though.
You're gonna use his link.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So this will be muted. We'll use
Yes.
this link and do
Yeah,
that.
so we'll all leave. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys then.
All right.
using it.
All right.
Hello? Can you hear me? But now we cannot hear him.
And it's up.
One of these days, we're gonna figure this out.
You've done, we've done a pretty good job. Some of these have worked famously and then just mysteriously it all crashes,
Yeah.
you know, one day. Yeah, whatever. It's always when the guests come over, you know.
Because I turned your microphone off.
Mine is on, mine looks on.
Yeah. But can he hear you, Peter?
I think he,
Yes, he can. We can't hear him.
he can hear me.
We
I
can't
cannot
hear
hear him.
Where's our volume?
It's up.
Okay,
This is really getting,
that happened. And and that other button works? Okay. So Sean is calling.
All we need is a speaker on
read
somewhere.
out loud. Can we not figure this out?
I don't get why we can
it's
we can
all
hear
because-
nothing or we hear an echo. I can't understand that part. It seems like if there's only one speaker on somewhere, we shouldn't be getting an
Hear me
echo.
now?
We should be using the
you
mics
talk?
in the room right now, right?
Well,
No, there he was right
I
there.
heard you.
Yeah? Yeah, you heard me?
Where's the volume up?
I just turned my volume
That's
on.
coming from his computer.
you know what? I don't think we should have you plugged in, Peter.
Okay. So unplug.
Yeah. Because I believe this is the only way I've ever made you.
There's more than one microphone on.
Okay, I just shut mine off.
Our room microphone is on now.
Can you guys hear us?
Can you hear us?
No.
No, because you turned your microphone off. Brian's microphone.
I could, he had good sound on.
I also,
Right, but why is it?
can't hear me? Can you hear me? I recommend that
Oh, we're not.
someone on our staff be logged into that other meeting.
Yes.
Just to make sure, because we're sitting in a room with mics and cameras connected to another meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. By the way, George, I was texting with
I'm glad I have.
Is that me?
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. All right, I'm gonna mute us until the board comes in, okay?
Are you kidding me?
Okay.
Hey, Michael, welcome. We'll get started here in just a minute. People are starting to come back in.
Great, thanks everyone.
Okay, we are on live mics, but Michael, give us just a second. I'm crossing over a commissioner and I got another commissioner on the phone, so bear with me. Okay. was like, wow. Oh, it's in there. And we are on. I'm just waiting on Randy to come back and then we should be ready.
George.
We're just here. Yeah, just, oh, there, he is here. Okay. And we're just waiting for Randy.
Yeah, I was turning my camera off so I can scarf the rest of this cold, now cold oatmeal.
I'm still doing the intermittent fasting and not eating until noon every day.
Oh, I do the same thing.
I have to eat the minute I wake up. I'm starving.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying the same thing, and I'm trying to make dinner earlier or skip it is my strategy.
Oh my God.
You do the fasting on the other end of things, huh?
I try.
I always do really well and eat really healthy until like 7, and then I get starving, and then I just eat like garbage and just ruin the entire day.
So funny.
I have a similar failure pattern, but it involves things like double and triple IPAs.
It's like, oh, I've been good, I'll reward myself, and then it's ruined.
Based on the old road. All right, thanks. Bye.
Funny.
It was work related.
All right.
Okay. Well, Michael, thanks for joining us. We're back from our executive session. We met in executive discussion to discuss some matters that were noticed, and we did not make any decisions. We did not keep any minutes, written minutes. So we're back, and Michael, thanks for your interest in open space. We have kind of a standardized process that we do here. So I'll turn it over to you at first, and just kind of interested to hear a little bit about your background, about your interest in open space, maybe how you found out about the opportunity, your chance to kind of tell us whatever you want. And then George and Randy and I will ask some questions probably. And then at a future meeting, we will put our heads together, decide what we want to decide, and Beth will let you know, and that will happen within a fairly short period of time. And just to maybe ease your mind a little bit, we very much appreciate people interested in helping us and in volunteering. So we're generally pretty inviting when it comes to these type of opportunities. So with that said, Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, yeah, thank you all for letting me join today. I'm Michael Rogers. My wife and I moved to the county about 2 years ago. So we live in Idaho Springs. I have lived in Colorado before. I used to teach at Front Range Community College. I've got lots of good friends and family here. So we've been trying to relocate here for a long time, and finally we're able to. The company that I work for is a market research provider in higher education. And I did some horse trading and got all of the Colorado State accounts. So I have Colorado State in Fort Collins, I have Pueblo, and online. So I do a lot of work with the Colorado State University system, and was able to move out here. I do a lot of recreation outdoors. And one of the first things that I noticed in Clear Creek County was obviously there's tons of federal land and state land, and then also there's great county land. And I started using many of the trails here very early on, and some of the other open spaces, and just enjoy it immensely. I'm proud to see what you all have been doing. And simultaneously, my wife and I have been looking for ways to get more plugged into the community and volunteer, as you said, and just be an active member of both town and county wherever we can. since I'm using open spaces, it kind of made sense for me to pay attention to that. And I noticed that there was an invitation on the county website for people to volunteer to be a commissioner. And that's really the genesis of it.
Perfect. George, Randy, who wants to engage first?
I guess I will. I'll just, thanks for applying. Your willingness to volunteer is obviously the very first qualification. And you're doing swimmingly on that. I guess I'm just curious, just before I kind of jump into policy stuff, just to get you to know a little better. What do you like to do on open space?
So I'm mostly a runner. So I do a lot of trail running. And so that was my first introduction to the open spaces was Silver Creek Trail and the Argentine Pass Trail and some of those others like that. And I use those weekly. So I'm often checking out some of the new trails or new to me trails in the county. I'm also a fisher. So like I've been watching the Alvarado space to see if we ever fish there again and what that would look like if we do. I think that's the only open space commission area that I would fish in. And then also backcountry skiing. So that kind of stuff, I guess, trail running and backcountry skiing and fishing.
Thank you. I'll defer to you, Randy, Sean.
And how long did you say you'd lived here, Michael?
We moved here August 1st, 2020.
2020. Okay. So you've had some time. So you're able to experience the great vast outdoors of Clear Creek County, as the governor would call it, since about the time you got here.
Yep. And it's been a COVID time too. So it's a kind of a unique 2 years, I suppose.
Yeah. And so I presume you've been able to witness the great interest in recreation in the area, the population, the increase in people that are doing the same, that are using it throughout.
Yes, certainly.
Anything else, Randy or George?
No, not really.
But I want to defer to you for these kind of opening, let me get to know you kind of questions.
The county's in transition, which I think is probably a true statement at any point in time, but it's probably a little bit more true now. And one of the things that has happened recently is the county creating a recreation department, which we've never had in the past. And the roles for open space historically have been much more roll up your sleeves and get dirty and hands-on than in places like Jefferson County. And that's changing. So I guess I'm kind of curious, with your background and what you know about the commission and what their role is in terms of strategy and land acquisition and et cetera, how do you see your particular background fitting in, and like what kind of skills and passions and interests other than being a user of the resources do you think you can bring to the commission and to the county?
Yeah. So I've joined now, Martha can correct me, I think 3 meetings, maybe 4. And so it has been interesting to see kind of that, even over the last few months, it seems to me kind of a transition of what the board is doing hands-on versus handing off to the county. So yeah, very interested to see that process. In terms of what I can bring to it, certainly a voice of a user. But there's another piece that in one of the meetings about dividing up tasks like acquisition and management, but one of them was communication. And I think I probably could be pretty useful there. I mean, again, my job is market research and marketing communication. I advise primarily universities, but our company advises all kinds of organizations on how to understand the needs of their various stakeholders and then how to communicate what they're offering to those stakeholders. And so that's certainly an area where I think I probably could add some of my background to the commission.
Okay, perfect. I really appreciate hearing that you've already been engaged and that you've attended a series of meetings. And so you know about the transition that's going on, and it sounds like you're excited to be part of that. So I think that's really, I think George and Randy did a pretty good job of covering the initial ground. So I don't think I really have anything addition other than maybe Michael, what questions do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious to know sort of, I mean, this is maybe too big of a question, but, you know, with transitions, you know, how you would see someone like me fitting into the commission and like what you would hope to see someone like me provide.
I think right off the bat, it's good to know that there's somebody in that's that has an interest in the use of open space and in its effective management. And also, it's good to, you know, it's good to have people that have been around a while and know the terrain. It's also good to bring in people who haven't been around as long, to bring new blood and ideas in, so to help people think new in different ways. One of the values you can actually bring is as, you know, someone who likes to use those spaces and has a history of doing that in other locales, I presume, and can bring thoughts from those locales to refresh the existing board. And that's not saying anything bad about the existing board, but it's always good to continue a churn of thinking about how to view open space and what values it brings.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think diversity is really important in all of our boards, and that's diversity in experience, age, demographics, everything. And I think that your professional background, I don't know, is really represented on the commission right now. I think that would be pretty beneficial. And I also just, I think, like I said, it is a transition, and I think it's transitioning to more of a governance role and kind of more strategy and governance. And, you know, I really like your professional background and that you're working kind of in some of those areas already. And that's not to, and I think it's really important, like Randy's hinted at, it's really important to have a diversity, including people who've been around for a really long time and have historic tribal knowledge of, you know, what's happened over the last 30 or 40 years. But I think that's probably my answer. Do you have any other questions, Michael, or do you have any comments, George?
Yeah, I think I can add to that a little bit. I think what it really comes down to is what we're asking is for the Open Space Commission to be thinking more about what's going to happen 20 years from now than what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think that I guess I'll turn it back into a question because, and I know you've heard the debates on the Open Space Commission in the Open Space Commission meetings. Like, if you could rank your interest, would it be on helping design signs and locate signs, or would it be in trying to figure out what the goals for those signs are?
Yeah, well, certainly the latter for me. In any case, you know, taking a step back and saying what do we need, how are we going to get there, would be more my interest. I mean, I've seen signs going up recently and they look really good, so I'm happy and proud of the folks that did it. But you know, if you're asking me my interest, it's more the kind of strategic piece of it.
Okay.
Would you have an interest in collaborating with staff, which handles the trails and management of trail system as opposed to acquisitions, on prioritizing for example, annual budgets collaboratively?
Yeah, I mean, that absolutely, I would. And that's something that I have been thinking about when we talk about acquisitions is, you know, every acquisition also comes with more management costs in the following year, right? So thinking about balancing what we're going to get with what it's going to cost to maintain would certainly be something that I'd be interested in participating in.
Let me ask you, I have the sense that you're an educator. You spent time in the classrooms and then you spent time as a consultant. So helping educators, to be better. How does that skill set lend itself to a major need of land managers, which is to figure out how to influence the behavior of folks who are using these lands? Do you feel like your work has some expertise that you can lend to a conversation like that?
At a micro level, being in the classroom, you have to very quickly figure out how to read a room and how to in every classroom I taught philosophy and ethics, so you had violently different opinions on whatever you were talking about, and you had to balance how to have a productive conversation in that room with people that disagreed with each other very strongly, right? So that's one piece that I think is a kind of a micro level. On a macro level, it'd probably be the more recent stuff, the consulting type stuff, where you're working with lots of groups, developing plans, learning how to get the stakeholder feedback, but then also communicate that back to the stakeholders in a way that can productively shift the conversation where you're trying to go. I don't do research for the sake of anymore, for the sake of just having the research. It's always with a goal of moving the university in a certain direction. And so I think, if we have a plan and we know where we want to go, then we get the pulse of the environment and figure out how to start shifting things where we want to direct them.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, George, Randy? Any other questions from you, Michael?
I think I'm good.
Okay, we have a couple staff members who interact a lot with open space, Amy Saxton and Martha Tableman. Amy, Martha, do you have any questions or comments to enrich our conversation right now?
No, I would just thank Michael for attending I'm pretty sure it's 3 meetings, and those have been, those are 2 or 3 hour meetings typically. And I just appreciate your willingness to take time away out of those 3 of those evenings and sit and absorb and show your willingness to commit to the group and the team and the effort. And I just wanted to recognize and thank you for that, Michael.
Thanks.
And I'll add that I think that I think Sean mentioned it's the issue about, and it's really Michael brings what Steve brings, and Jackie and Kristen actually, which is some younger blood and additional energy to the commission, as well as the perspective from a group of people that we better than reflect who we're trying to serve. There's what I'm trying to say. So we look forward to hoping that you'll approve Michael. People really were in favor of having him join.
Okay, yeah, thanks for adding that. I do have one other question, and I'm not sure, Amy, whether you or Martha might be best to answer it, but how many vacancies are there right now in the commission? And I know one of the things that we look at this through multiple lenses is, I mentioned diversity, like geographic diversity too. I feel like historically, for whatever reason, it's always been a little easier to get people interested in the east side of the county. And I don't really know that we have a lot of representation from Idaho Springs right now. So that's 2 questions. Idaho Springs representation and how many open spots are there?
Okay, we did have 2 spots. And then as of, I want to say it's last week, and I forwarded it to Beth, Alan Roman has resigned. And we currently have 3 open positions. Excuse me. And in terms of representation, Kristen Manwarn is from, I think, what I would consider the Idaho Springs area. And we actually have Frankie Smokey and Robert from the West End. And Margie from Empire. So we actually, over the years that I've worked with the commission, we tend from Floyd Hill in the East End, and we actually are in a really good position right now with having people from the West End and people from the middle. So we're fairly well balanced, even given what the people you're looking at. Steve's comes from the East End, I think, and if Michael is Idaho Springs, we're still pretty well balanced. We're not as disproportionately East End as we haven't been in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, can you clarify? Sorry, Sean. I think Kristen Manmoran lives in Blue Valley. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Is that?
I don't know if I would. I mean, it's close to Idaho Springs, and she might drive through Idaho Springs to get home. It might be faster to go over 103.
Probably.
So yeah, I would welcome to see, a resident of a municipality, and specifically of Idaho Springs.
So we have 3 open spots and 2 active applicants, Steve Hugedorn, and Michael. Is that accurate?
We're showing 2.
Right.
We're showing 2 vacancies.
And but Brian, we just had a resignation last week.
Yeah, I have Alan removed, but I'm not sure who else. You still have Frank, Kristen, Jackie, Bob, Robert, Mark.
Peter Monson and John Miller were the two.
No, Peter Monson resigned.
Right.
What about John Miller?
And John Miller also
John
resigned.
Miller resigned.
Okay.
Those were the 2 we were trying to fill, and then we had Alan last week. So that gives you 3.
Okay.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I know that somebody on Floyd Hill is interested in applying too, and I'll encourage them to do that. But I think George, Randy, anybody else, if you have any final comments, Michael, I think we're probably pretty much done here.
I think so, except just a quick process question from me. I know we had an interview with Frank Young, and we typically say, we're going to think about this. We'll bring it back in another meeting, give some direction to staff. Is there a possibility that, and I know that didn't happen with regards to Frank Young today, is there a possibility that manager update can be continued to another point in the meeting where we can issue said direction? Or is this something that we need to ask to have on an agenda on September
Yeah,
6th?
I think we need to put it on the agenda as an action item.
We can we'll have it on the agenda next meeting, both Frank and this one.
Although we never actually, we give direction, right? We don't do resolutions or vote on those things historically, do we?
Usually you guys talk about it and then let me know if you want to appoint somebody, and then I go to meet with Peter's team to develop a resolution for appointment. And then we bring that back to you for formal action.
So if we can get those resolutions, that would be good.
We'll do that on September 6th meeting.
Have you guys given direction on Jackie Doust's reappointment?
I don't think we interviewed her a long time ago, didn't we?
We'll bring all 3.
Yeah.
And Steve's. So you would potentially have 4 to consider direction on.
We have a few in line.
And I'm sorry to muddle the waters even a little bit more, but you talked about the 3 open spots. Jackie's and Frank's spots for reappointment weren't included in those numbers, right?
They're not considered open. No,
Okay.
those are, yeah.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad. All right. Michael, thank you so much for your interest. And as I think you heard, we'll be figuring this out and taking action on September 6th. So it'll be in the fairly near future.
Great. Thank you all.
Perfect. So our next agenda item is at 11, and it's another commission interview. So maybe we'll just take a quick break and be back at 11.
Okay.
I told her that she could, I emailed her yesterday that she could sign it and get it processed from our end.
Even though her side's not notarized, we don't care.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, we can, it was an electronic signature and the new agreements allow for electronic signature.
Yeah, they're not notarized.
Yeah.
While we're back on the air, before we jump into the next session, I just wanted to, man, maybe we haven't really kicked it off yet, but it's because Sean didn't say we're back in meeting. But in the Good Samaritan law thing I was talking about with Thai Church earlier, I had scanned and misread myself that thing a little bit. I don't think they were asking for a county policy on that type of reclamation and that kind of a program specifically, but they were asking us to develop a county position on that legislation. So I had misunderstood that part of it in terms of what kind of position they were looking for that would inform the letter of support. So I don't know that the letter of support itself is not sufficient. And I saw we received another email from him at 9:49. So
for an agreement that size.
Okay, thanks, Randy. All right, it is 11:01 and we have one more agenda item, and that is interview for RETAC board. And for those of you who don't know about RETAC, Regional Trauma Advisory Council, it's essentially a group, and it's not county wide, although the county gets representatives. The Front Range includes Grand County, some other areas nearby Gilpin, and Clear Creek gets 3 seats to appoint. And my first question, and maybe this is for you, Beth, was it Tom Candlin? Who is it that left?
Alec Gerard, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Has he left Clear Creek EMS?
Yes.
Oh, that sucks. Okay. So perfect. Well, thank you for your interest, Mr. Kugel. We just did one of these a minute ago, and we've kind of standardized them. So what we're going to do is give you an opportunity to introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself based on who you're talking to, and let us know a little bit about your background and your understanding what the responsibilities are for the RETAC and your interest in applying. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. My name is Don Kugel, Special Operations Captain for Clear Creek Fire. I've been in fire and emergency services since 2002, starting out in the Golden area. Spent time in Grand County as a EMS captain in Grand County. Went over to Summit, and was an EMS lieutenant with them, and ran their training, the fire training center for 3 years. In those positions, I was on the LEPC up in Grand County, running the hazmat section for the local emergency planning committee. That part of the board. In Summit, I was on the EMS board and the Central Mountain RETAC. So in all those pieces, understanding these boards and the commitments there, I've got a very good background on how the grants work through them, how we can build the regional response plans, which is the really big part of the RETAC, is to get that regional response on the same page, how we're doing triage, how the hospitals are working, and everybody has that good understanding of all the pieces. Talking with Director Monsu and Chief Jones, we thought having the fire aspect on this board would be help as well to give an all hazards aspect to the RETAC. So when we're making these plans, as fire being a big part of the response now with the full-time staffing, is going to give a better balance to our board contingent with Mr. Candlin as well. So all those pieces there in the background I have of already doing it at some point or another, I think will be a good work in with the RETAC as well. And I'm currently sitting on the MCI committee with them.
Okay, perfect. And Mr. Canlon, Tom, if you're listening, I'm very relieved to hear that you haven't rolled off the board. So thank you for your continued service. I have a couple questions. Don, how long have you been working with Clear Creek Fire Authority?
Full-time since November of last year, and part-time and volunteer with them since 18, November of 18.
What part of the county do you live in, or where do you live?
I do not live. I live in outside of Bailey and Shawnee.
Okay, a ways off.
Yes.
Okay, so you're lucky for you. I was going to kick you in the shins gently about the CDPHE provider grants because, as you know, RETAC actually vets those and then provides recommendation to SEMTAC. I happen to be on SEMTAC still. And one of the things I've been gently kicking Fire Authority in the shins about is the fact that I never see any applications coming to ask for money from
Funny you should talk about that. We're already working on the process. So
okay, that's good. I appreciate that. George, Randy.
So you have experience in both fire and EMS. Is
correct. Yeah, I'm a medic I've been a medic since 2006. I started out actually just as a fire EMT in Golden. So, and that's where my experience started. And then I went through critical care paramedic in Grand County and kept my fire certs as well. So I've ridden both the ambulance, the engine, and then ran the training center. So I've got all aspects of fire.
Okay. And you bring experience in management in those disciplines from both Summit and Grand County, you said?
And state and federal as well. I'm a federal responder with Health and Human Services for the DMAT. I manage the DMAT teams that go out. So I bring a full welding of federal, state, and local knowledge in response.
Thank you.
George?
Yeah, I guess I agree with the logic that having a fire-oriented person as part of, for lack of a better word, our delegation to the RETAC is of value. And I guess I'm curious, have you watched the RETAC and the sort of positions that have been held by our previous appointees?
And Alec, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, just all of them, all three of them.
Yeah, we've all had a pretty good relationship with them and good interactions. I've worked with members on the current RETACs and all my time. We all work together as we cross the valley and stuff. So I'm not a stranger to the RETAC, and especially with my time in Grand County, that was part of the same RETAC. So I've got a pretty good relationship with everybody on there.
Okay, and so can you speak a little bit to some of the dynamics here? Is who you're sort of going there to represent and speak for?
So really, I'm going with a fire background, but once you're on the board, the badge comes off. Just like when Brian's up there with us, the badge comes off, and you're speaking for the region and trying to make good plans for the region that makes sense for Clear Creek as well. So it's not really it's representing Clear Creek County in those positions, not necessarily Clear Creek Fire or Clear Creek EMS.
So you try to represent with the full breadth of your knowledge of both the area that you're representing as well as your full range of knowledge of the disciplines.
Exactly. That's where that all hazards background I have, I think, will come in very handy, is to make sure we're not just being fire centric, EMS centric, because we all have different roles on the emergencies, but we all have work together at the same time to make sure that it's a synergistic effort and not just an additive.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. That's kind of my only question. And it's sort of presuming an environment that doesn't exist today, which is that, I think it would be valuable for this board to pay more attention to our appointees on all of these boards and have them come and talk to us about what kinds of issues they're discussing and sort of bring this board into those conversations a little bit. And so that's why I'm asking that question to see, if that's a process that you will welcome.
I'll always talk about what we're working on. There's no secrets. I mean, the regional planning is what's going to save us in our small towns. So I always want to be very forward and thoughtful in that process.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That's kind of the only curiosity I have. I note in your letter, both Director Monsu and Assistant Chief Jeremy Jones support this request. Presume the same is true of the Fire Chief Kelly Baby. And
yes, this was just more to operations level, so we didn't take it up all the way. So that's, and I think he was out of town when we wrote the letter.
Yeah, that's fair.
And George, I think one answer to your question, Linda Underbrink is the executive director of Foothills RETAC. She has come before the board in the past. I'm talking about like mainly, I think, before COVID. And I think it would be nice to continue to extend invitations, maybe at least annually, something along those lines. Because as Mr. Kugel has suggested, I mean, it is a regional approach, and I think it would be important for all of us to know what's going on. And I know what's going on just because I do a lot of work with the RETAC and CPHE, but I think it'd be great if everyone did.
Yeah, and it's a comment and a desire with respect to all these positions that we appoint that my experience over the last 3 years in this office is that we kind of appoint people and then we don't really engage, like what's going on down there, what positions are you taking on our behalf, that kind of stuff, and just would like to see in general this board engage more with those appointees.
Yeah. So Eric Barber's a good friend of mine. He served as an EMS captain in Grant County for a long time. Did you guys ever have a chance to work together?
Eric and I are still good friends. We actually go to the same church on occasion. So yes, we are very good friends. He's done a very good job. And he's actually, I think, just sold his house and getting ready to move.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and you've worked with Alan quite a bit as well.
So if I were to call him up and ask him what it's like to work with you, what would he tell us? What would he tell me?
He would tell you I'm hard-headed and driven, but I'm pretty good at getting along with people.
All right, that's fair. And I really appreciate your interest. If I think back a couple of years ago, we had 2 people who were willing to serve on RETAC, and there was an empty spot for a long time. And I reached out to the Fire Authority. I reached out to Evergreen Fire, which I think could be another source of future applicants. But at the time, they felt like they were adequately engaged through their relationships at Jefferson County, which is the majority of Evergreen's fire protection district. So anyway, I very much appreciate your interest. What questions do you have for the 3 of us, if any?
Not just with my background, knowing it, not a ton. Would you want a little more interaction on an annual basis? Maybe semi-annual basis of just kind of an update from the board, and not necessarily always from Linda.
I would certainly be open to that. And another thing that I like about your background, I still serve as a ski patroller at Winter Park, and we talk about, and I've talked to Linda about this too, and Irv at the Winter Park Ski Patrol about doing, something interesting like an MCI exercise to kind of use the infrastructure of the RETAC and the different resources, because, there are all kinds of different things that could happen in our region, that have happened in our region, where multiple agencies are going to need to be engaged. And I think it would be, nice to further those conversations, and whether we did some kind of an exercise potentially at Loveland or Winter Park or somewhere in the FreeTech footprint, I think that would be beneficial.
Well, yeah, because we still haven't ever covered the lessons learned from Keystone's lift accident. We've never really put that back into play at any other places, so that would be a great place to do it.
Yeah, and my answer to the question is I'm very interested in that, and don't necessarily want to make it your job. Just wanted to check and see if that's something that you agree would be an improvement to the way we do things.
I think a 10-minute little update, once or twice a year for you guys, it would not be much for work for any of us on the RETAC.
Yeah, and I really, again, I like the idea of somebody from the Fire Authority having a front row seat now, and because I think you'll learn a lot about particularly the grant program, and it is a resource that we have not availed ourselves of. And equipment, training, there's all kinds, and every year kind of has a little bit of a different focus. There's one year that they were doing a stop the bleed, and I'm honestly not even sure what the next grant cycle is going to focus on, but the fact that you're potentially getting engaged, I think is exciting. And I think that would be something that would be potentially budget relieving for the fire authority.
Yeah, at least partially. You know, the one thing is what we'll see is CDPHE grants will go the opposite direction of what the all hazards key points are for the year. So that's the stop, and that's where the stop the bleed came from, because all hazards was all about infrastructure for the last 3 years.
Yep. And I know that, yeah, there's a 50% match required, although there is the possibility of lowering that to a 10% match based on financial conditions. So like I said, I'll kick the horse one more time and just say it's a great opportunity that we haven't taken advantage of.
We will be taking further advantage. I've been directed by Chief Jones, so.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I have. George, Randy, do you have any further comments or questions for Mr. Kugel?
No more.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's an impressive resume.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I've worked hard.
Thanks so much for your interest. I think we're done, and I believe we have maybe one more executive session to squeeze in before our meeting with Summit County at noon.
Thank you.
So with that said, I will move, the board moves into executive session to discuss the following matters.
Same link.
Yeah, it's the same link. Sorry, I'm bringing back up the agenda. What time are we returning?
We have to be back here at 12.
Okay. So I'm going to read 2 into the record. At least we should get at least 1 done. Pursuant to CRS 246402-4B, for the county attorney to conference with the Board of County Commissioners for the purpose of receiving legal advice in relation to submission of a ballot issue to voters in Clear Creek County related to taxation and revenues under Colorado law. And that may be after the 12 o'clock, but I wanted it in the record. The one that we will start with today, when we go into executive session now, is pursuant to CRS 246402-4B and E for the county attorney to meet with the Board of County Commissioners rather for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions pertaining to the intergovernmental agreement for the operation, administration, and financial support of the Clear Creek County Communications Center, and determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with regard to payment of annual operations charges for services of the Communication Center by IGA participating members.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. The board will now move into executive session to discuss the matters noticed. We will not be making any decisions. There will be no written minutes kept, and we will be back at noon for our joint meeting with Summit County. See you then.
less stress right now than I was this time yesterday.
Hey, this is Beth from Clear Creek County. Can y'all hear us?
Hi, Beth.
Hi, Beth.
Hello. Okay, my board is in executive session right now, but they should be out here just in a minute.
Okay.
And I will turn it back on.
Okay, we're gonna keep eating our lunch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like us to mute or?
No, we're fine. Oh, this is not what I need. What do I need? Where's it? Oh, we didn't talk about our budget, BOCC budget. Shoot. Well, let's see if we get some time back. Well, here, I'll, okay.
If I would have known there was going to be pizza, I would have driven over to Summit County.
We're in all-day budget meeting, so this is our only time to eat. We're so sorry.
Yeah, we know it's rude.
We are so sorry.
We're happy to order a pizza for you guys and have it delivered if you'd like for us to do that.
Randy's like us in the big room, but I would know that head of hair from me.
Will you read me the ID, Beth? Sorry.
167
I'm still working on the cold oatmeal from this morning, so
562.
no worries, I'm good.
115.
Thank you.
You have to let me know, tomorrow, and Josh and Elizabeth, you guys have to let me know if you'd rather see a larger or just a small picture of me in the background. I'm the only one in the BOCC room today. So the other guys are at home in their pajamas, and so I'm.
I see callers. I see callers.
Yeah, well, we
a caller, but
ourselves bigger, so what you see is what you get.
It kicks me off the internet. Is it CWPN?
I'm wearing shorts too, but if I showed you my legs, it'd probably blind you, so I won't do that.
All right.
actually, though, I have a quick bit of business.
There we go.
The board has just returned from our executive session. No written minutes were kept, no decisions were made, and now we're moving into our noon work session with Summit County's Board of County Commissioners who've joined us via Zoom. So welcome, Summit County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today.